我是芮成钢。16年前，当我来到北京，走进外交学院的时候，从来没有想过自己今天呢会站在央视的舞台上，会和中国乃至整个世界用这样一种方式发生着紧密的联系。那个时候，我的梦想是成为一名外交官。然而，对一生中的很多梦想来说，时间和精力会告诉我们，放弃有时候也是一种美丽。我必须感谢放弃这个曾经的梦想，因为放弃才有了今天的我和这份职业。可是关注领导者的人呢，可能会发现，我们节目的风格很多方面都和外交官的特质不谋而合。我们领导者团队的2011年是从瑞士一个名叫达沃斯的小镇开始的。在达沃斯，我完成了和全球50多位政商领袖的深度对话，这其中泰国总理阿皮什给我留下的印象最深刻。如果说领导者的节目是一杯咖啡，我们希望赋予它最好的品质和口感。工作之余，交响乐是我为数不多的几个爱好之一。与其说欣赏交响乐的大气，倒不如说更欣赏交响乐团成员们之间的紧密合作。因为这种合作精神正是我们领导者团队一直倡导的。我们曾经共同经历过从采访到播出仅仅间隔24小时的作战。我要向我的团队，我所有的工作伙伴们致敬。我生活在一个日行千里的国家，每一时每一刻，我们都真切地感受到中国经济发展的无穷力量。也正是因为这些，才使得我作为一个普通的电视人，能够和全球如此众多的政界、商界、学界的领袖们面对面的促膝交谈，聆听他们的个人传奇，分享他们对这个世界的感受。
你想使得这个少数几项这个手里少数几项货币政策的工具满足所有不同利益群体的要求是很困难的。
全年这种走势总体还是会保持稳定增长。
这个地球的两端的两个大国一定是必须加强合作的，否则是对谁也不利的。
他们在如潮的反对声中执着前行。
So really, I let the controversies all kind of wash over me. I don't spend my time thinking about it.
Darum gehen, die politische Union zu schaffen.
I am not a saint. Okay? I'm a human being like everyone else. But I've got some talents and abilities, and I'd like to help solve some problems. And I believe that's the essence of a fulfilling life, as opposed to 吵架。
您本人如果有機会重新選擇，還會從政嗎？
私自身はそういうことはないでしょうね。なりたいという仕事ではないということだけは確かですね。やらなければいけないというように思う、その意欲が強い人がやればいいでしょうね。
他们感悟人生的一点一滴。
I learned one thing in sports: keep your eye on the ball.
Do a job, do a job, and if you're not going to do a job, don't do a job.
I have a number of swatches. They're about $55 a watch. I happen to like them.
我很少跟人家告诉我的真情的告白，今天都被你挖掘出来。
One is your competitor, Central Governor of Mexico, Mr. Carstens, will be in China shortly as well, looking for support here in Beijing. Would you consider him a personal friend? Would you consider him a competitive?
No, he's a friend. Augustin is a friend, of course. And we spoke to each other before we respectively hit the road. I'm like that. I'm a competitor, and I was a national swimmer back at home in my much younger days. I'm a competitor, but I'm loyal to friends, and Augustin is a friend.
Yeah, but would you consider him a very competitive contestant?
I haven't seen him in action, so I don't know.
I see. What do you think of your chances of becoming the next managing director of the IMF?
Strong.
An expert in the United States.
Well, I wouldn't claim to be that, but I work a lot.
Few American thinkers and American leaders have access to those remote countryside in China, as you have been to. and you're forever associated with a photo of you hugging a panda. Are you aware that you're sometimes referred to as a panda hugger?
Well, that's a phrase that's sometimes used in some circles. I simply like animals, so I'm trying to save the tigers now too. So we need some help from China on that as well. There's only 3,500 left.
Are you aware that term is sometimes used by certain Americans or American media to indicate that someone is too close to China, that someone is pro-China?
Well, I know that's how the term can be used. But look, my experience is, I think, again, I leave others to determine the reputation.
Or consider the worst case scenario, that if Greece eventually had to restructure the debt or default.
The message of the Governing Council of the ECB is no credit event, no default.
Or the likelihood of Greece eventually having to exit, or any member economy having to exit the Eurozone economy, exit strategy or mechanism.
This is not envisaged in the Maastricht Treaty, so I have no other comment than that.
Whereas in Lisbon Treaty, there was a mechanism about one country exiting the European Union on voluntary basis, right?
Yes.
A lot of Chinese TV viewers have read about your bio, and they were curious about how you dealt with health challenges and what lessons you've learned from life, from rising from these challenges.
Well, I had cancer nearly 20 years ago, lymphoma. Fortunately, it was a treatable form of the disease, and doctors treated me, and they seem to have cured me, and it hasn't recurred. It's a frightening experience to go through. You're not quite sure how it will turn out, but with family support and a lot of good wishes from many people, fortunately I pulled through. It reminds you that life is fragile, that nobody is indestructible or indispensable, and you do your best, but you take it one day at a time.
But when it comes to reforms, sometimes the beneficiaries of the previous reforms will eventually grow into obstacles of further reforms. And how do you manage an issue like that? That such seems to be the case everywhere.
The option of not reforming and not changing means, as a nation, we will be left behind. We will be overtaken by other countries, and Malaysia will not be in the forefront. I believe there are some risks, but the risk of staying still and maintaining status quo will be a lot worse than not trying to reform.
You're known as a voracious reader of books and a great singer as well. What would you do when you retire?
Saya ini meskipun presiden adalah manusia biasa. 7 tahun lebih memimpin negeri ini, banyak sekali tantangan dan masalah yang saya hadapi. Ya, sebagai manusia biasa saya punya perasaan, punya emotion, kadang-kadang gembira, kadang-kadang kurang gembira melihat banyak persoalan di negeri ini. Oleh karena itu, karena dulu saya bermain musik, saya dulu menulis puisi, maka saya sekali-kali mengekspresikan apa yang saya rasakan ini, dan saya tujukan kepada saudara-saudara saya, rakyat Indonesia. Kalau saya mengkompos lagu misalnya, pesannya tentulah pesan untuk mereka semua. Ayolah kita jaga kasih sayang, kerukunan, harmoni di antara kita semua. Jadi bangsa itu ya harus optimis, tantangan selalu ada, tapi kalau kita bersatu dan bekerja keras tentu akan membawa kebaikan.
What are some of the fundamental lessons we need to learn from these very unfortunate happenings, including the political tensions in Thailand? What do government needs to do?
Well, the first thing I think we need to recognize
the diversity within all our societies, so that there will always be people who think different, who view things different from others. And the challenge now is how we can live with the diversity in a peaceful manner, without resorting to violence, without allowing the extremist groups to get more space to dictate the political developments. That's a real challenge, and it means that leaders have to be moderate, have to be tolerant, have to be patient, and have to really work with principles rather than trying to do what's convenient or trying to seek quick fixes to problems.
South Africa accounts for 70% of the world's total output of raw diamonds. There are reports in Business Week suggesting that it is also part of South Africa's ambition to make sure that a significant amount of Chinese future brides will be wearing a diamond ring with a diamond from South Africa.
Absolutely, we want to do business with regard to diamond. But those who engaged with us in trade in the past tended to take the raw diamonds, process them in their own countries, and did whatever, brought the finished commodities to us. What is going to be new with China is that China is very much in agreement with us to create beneficiation with diamonds in South Africa, so that we are going to be dealing with a country with expertise that is going to utilize its own expertise to help South Africa. In other words, to pass on the knowledge to South Africans. Absolutely important for us. That's a difference we are seeing, rather than the traditional diamond, what we call dealings that we have had with countries. I think it's going to be different with China. As we talk about beneficiation, for an example, in terms of processing the raw material in South Africa, that's part of modernizing our mineral resource industry. So that is not taken as raw out and be processed out there. That's part of what makes South Africa to be an interesting thing and to become a modern kind of economy.
Correct me if I'm wrong, is that you might actually end up being a more powerful president than President Lula, even though you're a gorgeous lady yourself and he's a gentleman. A more forceful, powerful, very passionate and good at executing policies.
O Brasil é país diferente de muitos outros. 52% da população brasileira é de mulheres, 48% é de homens. Isso significa o seguinte: pela primeira vez, as mulheres assumem a maioria que tem no Brasil. Mas a gente sempre diz o seguinte: os homens não precisam de ficar preocupados, porque nós somos, os 52% é mãe dos 48%. Né? Não tem um único dos integrantes dos 48% que não tem uma mãe. E a função da mãe é cuidar. E o que eu quero fazer no Brasil é cuidar do povo brasileiro.
I used to read reports comparing you with Berlusconi of Italy, citing that both of you are billionaires.
Of course, there are some things in common. We are both males. We both own a soccer team, a TV network. We both were entrepreneurs. But there are many differences. I think that we have different ways to face life. And I'm younger than him. I have more hair. And even though there are some coincidences, I think that we are different persons.
I have a magazine here with your photo here calling you the man who is saving Europe.
No, you're too optimistic. It says, can this man save Europe? ? It doesn't give the answer.
When you open up the page, it says, the most important man in Europe. I think the cover had a question mark simply because it wants to arouse more
create suspense.
To create suspense, exactly. And there are also other press calling you the hero of Europe, the new Caesar of Italy. Do you think that's an overstatement?
I think it is certainly an overstatement. That perception has existed. For example, also in conversations with the leaders of the US or China, one can see, and especially one could see a couple of months ago, for example, when I visited President Obama in Washington, a great deal of attention, I think an unusually high degree of attention paid to Italy because of the crucial role that it might have played for the good or for the bad.
中国的电视观众呢，去年都看到了，波兰发生的非常不幸的总统的坠机事件。我们也注意到您本人的人生以及职业生涯也因为这次不幸的坠机事件发生了很大的改变。而且我们看一看历史哈，波兰这个民族呢，无论遇到多么大的困难或者说是灾难，都能够很顽强的重新的站起来，重新的恢复。您觉得在波兰的这种顽强哈，这种精神的背后是什么力量在支撑着波兰？
Ja myślę, że siłę narodów, siłę państw poznaje się między innymi po tym, czy potrafią sobie poradzić z sytuacjami kryzysowymi. Oczywiście katastrofa lotnicza, w której ginie prezydent kraju, jest wstrząsem, jest kryzysem, ale polska demokracja sobie z tym poradziła. Jesteśmy już po wyborach prezydenckich, po wyborach parlamentarnych. W Polsce trwa w dalszym ciągu wzrost gospodarczy.
Don't you think some of those bankers' salaries are too high? I saw a photo of you and Obama discussing together. Would you share some of what the media calls the class warfare sentiment?
When the state has to invest so much public money into a financial institution, it's only logical that you have a view as a government on how high the salary should be, how high the bonuses should be, etc. In general, I would be very cautious for government politics to interfere with salary setting within companies.
Whereas we're witnessing the rise of a whole new generation of political leaders, such as yourself. You're only 40 years young, and some of your peers, David Cameron, Prime Minister Mark of the Netherlands. Is there any features or styles, leadership styles, that are distinctively different from some of your much older?
Because we share more or less the same values when it comes to European basic values. But of course, the style might differ because we have the younger generation leaders have different experience of the world. We have experienced a little bit different thing than the older and more experienced generation of leaders.
我们前段时间在做这个欧债危机报道的时候，我们在出现危机的几个主要的国家哈，包括西班牙、希腊，都做了比较深入的报道。当时我们觉得情况非常严重，但是呢，我们听说您觉得这场火灾已经全部过去了。真的如此吗？那么西班牙这场危机到底的根源在什么地方？目前的这些紧缩政策是否足以帮助西班牙度过这场危机呢？
Bueno, como se sabe, hemos vivido la crisis del sistema financiero más fuerte desde la Gran Depresión de los años 30 del siglo pasado. Esa crisis financiera se originó en Estados Unidos, pero hoy la economía y el sistema financiero está muy relacionado. Afectó en cascada, desde luego, a Europa, que tiene una gran relación entre los bancos y el sistema financiero con Estados Unidos, y al afectar al sistema financiero, al crédito, paralizó una buena parte de la actividad económica. Paralizó la construcción, el sector inmobiliario, porque es un sector que trabaja con crédito, y el crédito se frenó radicalmente. Y España tenía un gran desarrollo del sector inmobiliario, del sector de la construcción. Por eso la crisis de crédito provocó una crisis muy fuerte en el sector inmobiliario que ha originado la crisis económica. Ahora estamos saliendo de la crisis económica.
both yourself and President Obama responded directly or indirectly to Premier Wen Jiabao's concern about the safety of Chinese assets and wealth in US dollars. But what's been happening seems to be telling us that there is a possibility for the US dollar to seriously depreciate. Should we worry about that?
Well, I want to make it crystal clear. A strong dollar is in America's interest. We're going to do what's necessary to make sure that our markets remain the deepest, most liquid, safest markets in the world. You've seen this president move very aggressively to help bring recovery back on track and to make sure that the world understands that as recovery gets back on track, we're going to bring our fiscal deficits back to a sustainable position. That's our commitment to the American people and to the world economy as a whole. As I said, a strong dollar is in America's interest. We have a very strong independent central bank with a commitment to keep inflation low and stable over time, and there's no risk in what you said.
And you mentioned your share of mistakes, things that you talked about in your book, On the Brink. And most people would consider the collapse, or the decision to let Lehman Brothers collapse, a very controversial mistake or not. Would you consider that a mistake?
No, because we did not have the authorities in the government to rescue Lehman Brothers. I worked very hard to rescue Lehman Brothers and prevent the failure. It's an interesting thing in our country too. I think many people are skeptical when I give that answer, despite the fact that Ben Bernanke, Tim Geithner, and I have all made the same point. We did not have legal authorities, emergency authorities to deal with non-banks and to liquidate them, wind them down outside of the bankruptcy process. We didn't, before going to Congress and getting the TARP, have the authority for the Fed or Treasury to guarantee liabilities or put in capital. So we were fortunate when Bear Stearns needed to be rescued that we had a buyer in J.P. Morgan who could work with the Fed and guarantee the trading book during the shareholder vote. But we didn't have those authorities with Lehman Brothers.
从这个欧洲出现债务危机以来，我们一直在讨论，看一看欧洲的实际情况。欧洲统一了货币，但是呢，没有统一政治，可能也永远无法统一政治，因为政治呢都是各个国家有自己实际的情况。
Die Europäische Union war auch die Antwort auf die Fehler, die im Krieg insbesondere von Deutschland gemacht worden sind. Denn Deutschland, das nationalsozialistische Deutschland, hat den Zweiten Weltkrieg angefangen, gar keine Frage. Und die Europäische Union war die Reaktion auf den Krieg. Man wollte nie wieder in eine solche Situation kommen. Und das hat ja auch funktioniert, Gott sei Dank funktioniert.
福田康夫首相安倍晋三首相、鸠山由纪夫首相，包括麻生太郎首相，都是出身于政治世家。我记得您本人也跟我说过，您可能在当年年轻的时候从政，可能未必是您一直以来就有的抱负，也是后来才决定从政的。那么您觉得这种家族政治的背景对于日本的政治家来说，更多的是一种压力还是一种帮助呢？
さあ、私自身のことを言うしかないと言いますけどね。私は企業で働いておりました。そしてまた私の父もですね、高齢化しまして、そしてすぐそばで助けてあげなければいけないという状況がありましたんでね。それでこの世界に入ったんですけどね。日本の政治家というのはそんなね、一見派手そうですけども、実態はそんな楽しいものでもないし、ね、そして自分の言動はね、いろいろな制約が加わるし、ね、それから政治家やってればですね、お金儲けできるとかそういう世界でもないしね、むしろ非常に厳しい、そして禁欲的なね、生活を送んなければいけないと。成田がいい人がなってくれないですよね、結局。そうすると将来的には日本にはいい政治家がいなくなってしまうと。こんなシビアな職業はないと思いますね。
您本人如果有机会重新选择，还会从政吗？
いや、私自身ですか？私自身はそういうことはないでしょうね。
行长在加息的问题上，您有两难吗？一方面，比如说要控制通胀预期啊，
我觉得多数央行的这个政策工具啊，都存在两难。经济体呢，首先呢，它就有不同的利益主体，手里少数几项货币政策的工具，满足所有不同利益群体的要求是很困难的。拿汇率来理解，汇率升高的时候呢，出口者可能抱怨，进口者说：“哎，这个可能有好处，是吧？它东西可以卖便宜一点，市场可以打大一点，是吧？”除了利益群体以外呢，还有这个整个对这个整体经济啊，比如说你可能对增长好，对物价不一定太好，就是这个呢，它就是这种大板块上呢，它需要权衡，权衡。再有一个就时间跨度上，有些政策短期看好，但是对中长期不见得有利，而另外有一些呢，中长期有利呢，短期呢可能呢还要忍受一点代价，是吧？所以这个呢，都是表明了这种权衡或两难的关系。
我记得上次和您做专访的时候，您当时也跟我说过，说有的时候觉得很委屈，面对美国对于中国的一些压力哈，关于中国再平衡啊，中国要尽量的这个减少顺差呀等等。您说很想在美国买一些东西，但是美国人不卖给中国，在这方面的这种困扰是不是还存在？
应该说依然存在。美国总统提出了5年出口倍增计划，但是他没有很详细的做法。那么最近美国在12月9号去年的公布了4个法案，这4个法案呢，对一些国家给予了贸易的便利。这些国家包括他的同盟国37个，包括以色列和阿尔巴尼亚这样特殊的国家，还包括125个可以在出口限制产品放宽审批的，加起来是164个国家，我们没有在里面，所以我们仍然被歧视性的排在164个以外。那么在这种情况下，美国跟我讨论出口的平衡是无从谈起，因为我想买的东西你不卖给我，那你的进口商又大量需要我的价廉物美的东西，我们很难讨论这问题。但是即便这样，这种状况也会长期存在，我们还是要正常的应对下去。所以我们一方面继续向美国提出应该取消对中国的出口，特别是高技术出口的限制。另外一方面，我们也会增加购买一些美国的产品，包括消费品。
我觉得很好奇的就是，比如说您和您的继任者，吉拉德总理，他曾经是您的副手，之后他一下成了总理，您成了外交部长，你们之间的关系你怎么看待他？
面对我在党内所政治挑战，我的决定就是继续下去，继续做出贡献。搞外交，我有一点知识，也能够帮忙解决好一些问题呢。我想那是最好的方法。
就是把个人的得失和利益置之度外，更多的考虑国家民族或者说这个世界的利益。
我不是雷锋，我不是一个革命英雄，我就是一个普通的人。用英文来讲是这样子 ：I am not a saint. Okay, I'm a human being like everyone else, but I've got some talents and abilities, and I like to help solve some problems. And I believe that's the essence of a fulfilling life, as opposed to 吵架。
There are ups and downs in every investor's history. Would you call current right now a downturn or upturn of your investment career? And is there, looking back at the past 10 years, was there anything you would have done differently?
Oh, I've made all kinds of mistakes. I'll keep making mistakes. That's the one thing I can promise you. That's part of living. I mean, if you're making decisions, day by day, week by week, you're going to make some mistakes. You should never run the kind of risks so that those mistakes can seriously injure your financial condition. But I will do I've done some dumb things, in the last year. I'll do some dumb things in the next year, and it won't bother me. I do not expect perfection in myself. I think it's a terrible mistake because nobody's perfect, and but I will have. I think the best day is always tomorrow.
A major position in the White House, in the cabinet, would you say yes?
I don't think so.
Why?
I mean, I love what I do. JP Morgan has a big role to play. I'm good at. I always tell people, look at me. I'm not sure I'd be that good in a political job.
Another controversy about the bankers was in the words of Joe Stiglitz, unethical. The bankers' mindset. You use government bailout loans.
I think it's or anyone bankers. Bankers are unethical. I mean, it's like Americans or Chinese or media or I just don't like it. The second I hear that, I don't pay attention to what someone's saying because it's prejudice and stupid in the face of it. There are unethical people in banks.
But recently, when Jamie Dimon was on my show, he specifically criticized sentiments such as what you mentioned, revolving door. He called this the bankers bashing. He said he is sick and tired of people on Wall Street being classified as bankers, and he would consider guys like you the banker bashers. How would you react to that?
That we see people come from Wall Street, go to Washington, pass laws like deregulation that allowed the banks to do the kinds of things that they did, and then go back to Wall Street to make millions of dollars. So that's a fact. That's a fact. Now, you could say they did it thinking that it was best, but in some sense, the basic confusion was what they thought of is good for Wall Street, they thought was good for America.
You were listed by Forbes as probably the only billionaire who made it thus far by working as an employee of a corporation, not a relative of the founder or the founder of the company. And Chinese viewers would like to know what kind of a car do you drive, what kind of a watch do you wear, because in China that's largely a status symbol and also a symbol of success.
No watch. I always lose them, scratch them up, so I wear no watch. I drive a Ford Lincoln MKS. My father was a Ford employee for 30 years. I'm loyal to Ford, always Ford in our family. So I drive a Ford and wear no watch.
So you live a relatively modest life.
Everything's relative.
Exactly. He's a very smart person, and in my opinion, no American president will be genuinely anti-business. How did he end up being someone who's called anti-business by the business leaders?
Well, this is an unusual administration in Washington. Almost no one in it has had any business experience whatsoever. And it's had the lowest percentage of business people of any administration since World War II by a lot. And I think sometimes they make certain decisions without understanding the consequences of those decisions because there's no one in the room to tell them not to do that.
起议论的多的富士康事件里面那些发生不幸的农民工，他们到底的问题的纠结的地方，是不是到底是生活还是工作？
这个事情呢，很不幸的它发生在我们富士康的身上我想我自己也很自责这件事情。从发生以后到最近9月底，我大概在我的龙华的富士康总部住在了将近4个月的时间。我们总是觉得说，我们也要负一部分的责任就责任就是说，我们没有警觉到这个年轻一代他们需求转变了，所以他们在工作以后的生活、感情，我们在发生的这10几例里面，其实将近有一半是感情的问题。
在电视里、在报纸上、在网络上，很多的中国观众对您已经非常熟悉了。我们知道这次您是从美国直接飞到北京，我相信您肯定有一些特别想面对镜头和中国的消费者，特别是那些曾经、现在或者是未来的丰田的用户说几句话。所以在节目的开始，我想请您借这个机会，把您心中最想跟中国的丰田的用户说的话先说出来。
まずアメリカから直接こちらへ飛んでまいりましたのは、アメリカでもそうだったんですけれども、アメリカではですね、お客様とか、我々一緒に仕事をしている仲間に直接語る場を得たこと、大変ありがたく存じました。そして、それが一段落というか、説明をある程度済ました後、いち早く私の頭によぎりましたのは、以前から担当させていただいておりましたこの中国でございます。この中国のこのお客様というのは、私にとってかけがえのない方々ばかりでございます。そのお客様が私の名前がついた車に乗ることを非常に不安に思っておられる。これは大変なことだということで、直接ですね、来てお客様に事情がこういうことですよ。ですから乗っていただいている車は安全ですよということを直接語るために参りました。